In my last video, I talked about how MapleStory discourages group play in a way that exceeds the standard set by its fellow modern MMOs. Every human being on the planet watched the video and unanimously agreed that I was a very clever baby genius with a swollen head. Unfortunately, it seems Nexon themselves picked up on this. They immediately hotfixed the previously disabled distribution system within just a few hours of the video going up. The eggheads over at Nexon promptly got to work on developing a time machine, which would allow them to implement a reality shift, causing my live video to be seamlessly updated to reflect the distribution system actually being active the entire time. Once again, I have been made to look the fool by Inkwell, but while our clandestine game of intercontinental chess continues to play out just beyond the public eye, I thought it'd be fun to cover a topic that's a bit more lighthearted this time. In that video, I briefly touched on event minigames as an example of social play in MapleStory done well. Originally, that was going to be the extent of it, but after a bit of consideration, I realized that the current Maple University event gave me a good opportunity to talk about MapleStory's minigames a bit more in depth. There's currently 6 games available to play, which is a pretty unprecedented variety to have access to all at once. This seems like a pretty good opportunity, and overanalyzing stupid and minor aspects of MapleStory is pretty on brand for what I'd like to do on this channel. The goal for this video is... I don't know. If I had to make some kind of mission statement, it would be to go through each of the Maple University minigames and attempt to talk about / review them. Along the way, maybe we'll figure out what makes a good minigame and what makes one... suck. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, then stick around as we take a look at MapleStory's myriad minigames. Dark Souls doesn't have fishing. Obviously, right?
Are you okay? Yeah.
Why would you want to fish in Dark Souls? Game design, much like script writing, often involves cutting out excess fluff that doesn't fit the core principles the work is trying to achieve, allegedly. You don't buy a challenging action game with light RPG elements because you want to spend 6 hours doing a fishing minigame in order to 100% your Estus flask. There are exceptions, and it's hard to define what is and what isn't okay to include. That's part of the art of game design. But at least from a player perspective, the pattern is clear. People don't want to have to do things they didn't sign up for. Even so, it seems that as the scope of the game broadens, players naturally become significantly more tolerant to games within the game. Long RPGs like Final Fantasy are filled with minigames, often outright requiring them for story progression. Open-world games like Yakuza are arguably more well-known for their minigames than their combat or maybe even their story. And then there's the subject of my unfortunate hyperfixation, the MMO. Maybe it's due to their massive and usually ever-increasing scope, but MMOs are often synonymous with minigames. If the bog standard increase level to do hard raid to increase level to do raid better progression system could be considered the average MMO's core gameplay loop, then it stands to reason that nearly everything outside of that scope is a minigame. Pet battles, ocean fishing, the entire gold saucer, like a fourth of WoW's world quests, the weird dart game they have you do in Final Fantasy XIV all the time. The list of minigames in just WoW and 14 is limited almost only by what I'm willing to get footage for, and that's why you're just looking at trailer footage. Even though MMOs seem to love them, when it comes to evergreen minigames, MapleStory is pretty lacking. What we do have, however, is event minigames, which finally brings us to the main topic of this video. Sorry, that Dark Souls tangent was absolutely necessary. Please understand. MapleStory's modern design is extremely event-centric. There is almost always some kind of event running, and they're usually very similar. They almost always involve some kind of daily, weekly, and boss kill tasks that all reward some kind of currency that can be spent to purchase crucial progression items. Despite their time-limited nature, these events are not optional. The game assumes you will participate in them, and they're one of the primary sources of important resources that your character needs. And in addition to everything else I just mentioned, these events will sometimes include a real, actual, true-to-life mini-game within the game. They're still incentivized through the event's systems, giving either items or coins or buffs or whatever, but they're also a lot more skippable than the main parts of the event that I outlined earlier. The rewards are usually just enough of an incentive to get people to participate without making them feel mandatory. Usually. This time-limited nature is probably the main difference between MapleStory's minigames when compared to other MMOs or just games in general. That and the fact that they're usually bad. At the absolute best, they're inoffensive, simple time killers, maybe on the same level as a mediocre Flash game lost to time. But at worst, they're racing water boats with GMS ping. Small aside, but I think MapleStory's old fishing system would have counted as an evergreen minigame, but like many other overseas features, it was underutilized, underappreciated, and over-deleted from the game. Outside of the Chinese version, I mean. But no way am I about to roll up to the high school reunion and tell my old bullies that I'm an Adventure Island Online YouTuber. Other MMOs put effort into their minigames, often elevating them with systemic depth and unique rewards to the point of being considered bona fide evergreen side content. In contrast, MapleStory has precious little to do outside of its core progression path, and as is often the case with the modern game, what little we do get is usually wrapped around time-limited mobile game-esque events. Still, I'm not one to look at Gift Inkwell in the third eye, so let's check these games out. I've probably given you the opposite impression over the course of this video, but I usually do skip these things. So let's go play each of the 6 current Maple University games and do our best to dignify them with an actual review and discussion. The last chance to click off. First up, we have the classic, iconic Reviewing one card is weird, because it's impossible to review one card without accidentally reviewing Uno, and I don't want to review Uno. Instead, I'm just going to focus on the parts that are unique to MapleStory. Okay, fine, you can stop asking, alright, I get it. I give Uno a 5.5 out of 10. Are you happy now? Can we move on? Disclaimer. I have not played every single permutation of Uno, so if I think something is from MapleStory and it isn't, then, I don't know. Get mad, I guess. Are you gonna get mad about a video about minigames in MapleStory? One card is Uno, except that you're a MapleStory character when you play it. Can you believe that this video has taken me like an entire month? It's a long time for something nobody's gonna watch. One card's main innovation is the inclusion of attack cards and night cards. Attack cards contribute to a stacking counter that builds up until the next person is forced to draw a card, wherein they will be made to draw a card for every stack built up to that point. This has the potential to lead to a very humorous scenario where someone could potentially draw up to 12 cards and immediately lose from having more than 17 cards. I've never seen this happen, but the fact that it could is really funny. Night cards are represented by the Chief Cygnus Knights, and they have a variety of effects, as well as belonging to one of the 4 colors. Eckhart is his own color. Listen, I could go into detail attempting to outline potential strategies to twist this extremely luck-based game in your favor, or I could try to talk about how the night cards lead to interesting interactions, like how Irena's effect skews the value of green cards, but I don't think that's why anyone is here. One card seems pretty well liked, but it's a stretch to say there's a serious element of strategy. There might be a few times per game where you get to make an actual choice, but more often than not, you're just clicking whatever lights up to try to end the game faster. I have seen one game go on for almost the entire 15-minute timer, where every player in the game had the opportunity to go down to 1 or 2 cards before drawing a stack of 5 or more. I wish I recorded it because it genuinely felt like one card had turned into a cooperative experience where all four of us were doing everything in our very limited power to escape, and every time someone got down to their last card, we'd all cheer before it all came crashing down. All in all, one card is hard to hate, but its main strength really is just the fun social atmosphere it creates. And I don't want to downplay that. This is coming from the anti-social design guy. I feel like I should say more about everybody's beloved one card, but come on, it's Uno. I said I wasn't gonna review Uno. Okay, it's 5 a.m., so this is probably gonna take a while. Okay, while we wait here, let's go find a single-player game to play instead. Alright, so passing notes is DDR, kind of. The goal of the game is to push the arrow key, which corresponds to the proper color of these notes which move down this track. For each success, you get some points, and it fills up this fever gauge that lets you slap the spacebar like a maniac for a few seconds. You press the wrong button, you're stalled for a few seconds. We've all played games like this before. Some of us may have even played it in MapleStory because I'm pretty sure this is a reskin of a previous event minigame. After reading the rules, I was excited to give the game a try. A single-player, skill-based score attack game is the exact thing I was looking for after figuring out just how long the monster pyramid queue could go. But as soon as I started the game, my hopes and dreams were immediately shattered, and I wasn't really sure if I even wanted to play this game anymore. Basically, passing notes was my shining star force. In every other DDR-style push-the-arrow game, the arrows are color-coded, but they're also, like, arrows. They more or less all look like this. Even the ones that don't still have some kind of clear orientation or discernible characteristic. These games are essentially testing your reaction time, and the fun of them comes from entering a flow state where you're reacting faster than you can consciously comprehend. The notes, holy shit, is that why they called it passing notes? Often come down the track incredibly fast, so in order to react, you need to minimize the amount of time between recognition of what you're supposed to do and getting your fingers to actually do it. For this reason, the arrows have to be immediately recognizable. My problem with passing notes is that the notes are color-coded, but they're mapped to arrow keys with no visual indication as to what color matches what key aside from the little control display at the bottom of the screen. The game wants you to be passing notes as quickly as possible to rack up the highest score, but being able to do that successfully and enter into that flow state where the game becomes fun is made considerably more difficult because there's that few added frames of thinking that comes from having to consciously process what color arbitrarily maps to what button. It's not impossible to learn, and during the course of my first few games, I was getting better, but it never became second nature. There was always some small hesitation I felt from having to remember if orange was up or left. One could argue this contributes to some sense of challenge, but one would be wrong. I've played rhythm games, they're already hard. Considering this game would be otherwise essentially perfect for what it's trying to achieve, I think it's safe to say that if the decision to ruin it was the product of a creative vision, it probably wasn't worth it. As for the scoring, the game shows you your streak, but this is completely cosmetic. You get a point bonus for every 10 successful notes, but a fail doesn't reset the counter. Even if your streak isn't a multiple of 10, you can still get the bonus. The majority of your points seem to come from the fever state anyway. I found it a bit disappointing that I was consistently reaching the highest tier of point value. I wish instead of being split into brackets, it was more of a linear formula that would better reflect your actual performance. I realize that at a certain point you only want a high score for personal satisfaction, but I think it would be nice if the highest tier was a bit more aspirational. I suspect this is a complaint I'll have in the future, so I probably won't bring this up again. Even despite all the complaints I have, it's refreshing that there's actually something to talk about with this one. I had a decent time sitting alone in a dark room at 6 AM listening to High School Musical songs and trying to beat my high score. Here's the highest score I was able to achieve. See if you can beat it, and then make fun of me. Based solely on just reading the rules of the game, Academy Adventure isn't a minigame I can remember from a previous event. Regardless, it just sounds like Space Invaders, which as far as minigames go, sounds pretty good. Let's check it out. Come on, let's go. Let's go check it out, come on. Okay, so it's not like Space Invaders at all. You move with A and D, and you shoot by aiming the mouse. You have to kill these bird guys to get points, and they'll occasionally drop items that empower your next few shots. Grabbing any power-up overwrites your current one, so if you want to keep a shot style, you need to be careful about moving. Rocks fall from the sky that can stun you because at the end of the day it's still MapleStory, and you're given a dash button to try to avoid them and make it easier to grab power-ups. Right off the bat, I was kinda surprised by just how viscerally fun this minigame was. It's fun to watch enemies blow up, but every upgrade except one is built to achieve the same purpose, killing lots of enemies. With passing notes, I at least felt like I could improve at the game to raise my score, but Academy Adventure just doesn't feel like I'm as in control. The maximum point threshold is a bit more difficult to reach this time at least. You pretty much have to defeat the large balloon that spawns in order to hit it consistently. There are lots of things I could talk about with Academy Adventure. I could explain the different power-ups or how the different monsters being carried give different points, but at the end of the day, it really is just holding left-click, aiming into the biggest group of enemies, and making sure you have any power-up active. It's fun to watch the screen blow up, but there really isn't much thought behind it. Because of that, I can get the exact same experience grinding with a VIP booster, and at least that gets me Soul Urta fragments. Everything I like about this minigame is also an argument for bringing back wild totems. Academy Adventure is fun, but I found it getting less fun every time I played it. Because of this, I'd have to rate it pretty low, which feels weird because, again, it is fun. One card is similarly thoughtless, but you can also just focus on something else the majority of the time. Academy Adventure occupies that spot on the graph where it's brain dead but very involved, which makes it extremely painful. OSRS players know what I'm talking about. Not even Bet on It could save this one. By the way, here's my ranking. Oh my god, dude. No way is he about to review Academy Beach Ball. Academy Beach Ball is Breakout. Maybe there's some other game that's a more direct inspiration, but whatever that hypothetical game is, you could trace its genealogy back to Breakout, so I'm gonna call it Breakout. In Breakout, the goal is to break every one of these bricks by bouncing some kind of ball, bullet, or magic spirit orb. The fun of the game comes from setting up chain reactions as you carve out space between the blocks, eventually opening up the top part of the screen where the ball will naturally ricochet repeatedly, breaking multiple bricks from one successful bounce. Academy Beach Ball is similar, but with a few differences, which again might be attributed to other games which Breakout inspired, but for our purposes, I'm gonna pretend Wikipedia's list of Breakout clones doesn't exist. If you know what game MapleStory is specifically ripping off, let me know in the comments. I'm not joking, I think I actually care. Unlike Breakout, Academy Beach Ball features a few different layouts which are randomly selected for you. Different monsters have different numbers of hits that are required to defeat them. There's also these little firework bomb things you can hit, but they don't add a lot, you just kinda hit them when you can and then you play the game normally. The biggest difference is that you don't bounce the ball off a paddle. Instead, you're given free aim with an arrow indicating its path, making the game feel kinda like the original Bloons. However, unlike Bloons, you're limited by a timer as opposed to a finite number of attempted shots. This choice is really strange to me. As the game goes on, more balls will spawn, which you have to walk up to in order to throw. With the timer ticking down constantly, you're better off throwing more balls rather than throwing balls better. Personally, I think this kind of undercuts the point of the game. It's not as fast-paced and reactive as the original Breakout, but it's not as strategic or thoughtful as Bloons. It occupies this middle ground where it feels like you're really just meant to fire off as many shots as you can. Of course you still have to aim, but the initial point of impact feels more meaningful than the bounces that come after. Granted, there is still some satisfaction that comes from trying to land your shot next to a ball that's already on the ground, thereby maximizing the value you get from having to slowly walk over to pick it up. Every once in a while, a ball will just fly through a few of the blocks, which kind of goes against the point of the minigame, but it's infrequent enough that it's easy to overlook and usually just leads to a quicker follow-up shot. It's mostly just funny. Overall, I found myself largely just ignoring the timer and trying to line up the sickest shots I could, which, despite my complaints, still feels like a viable way to play. It certainly wasn't enough to prevent me from consistently getting the highest point tier again. I said I wouldn't bring that up, but have I brought that up in every single section so far? This video's a disaster. What am I doing? 30 minutes about mini-games? I think the game would benefit a lot from having the dash button from Academy Adventure to really lean into the faster, more action-focused design the timer is pushing. I even think it would be better to increase the score thresholds and have the mouse aiming component of Academy Adventure to really make it feel like we're playing against the timer by having to quickly aim our shots and move around. Quickly? I wrote quickly twice. As it stands though, I still think this one was pretty enjoyable. Despite the few complaints I have with it, it was still pretty fun to— wait a minute. Is that the Monster Pyramid cube? I'm stuck in some kind of Nexon Infinite Tsukuyomi. Could this be Inkwell's doing? Well, false alarm, I suppose. Also, this guy has some big plans. Moving on. Alright, so more so than any other game on here, Cakestack Tower is literally just the Stacker arcade game. There's not even any fun twists or anything. I'd go to my local Dave & Buster's to show you, but Inkwell is watching my every move. Guys, I don't know what to say. It's just the arcade game. Like, it's technically good, but that's because it's just the thing that they're stealing from. There really isn't a lot to say. The only thing I can think of is that, as if to specifically punish me for all my complaining, this minigame doesn't have point tiers. It's just 1-to-1. Each cake stacked is 1 point, and without a timer to encourage you to rush, the game is just pure skill. I've been trying to reach 2100 points in each minigame to earn the cosmetics, but that means I have to stack 2100 of these damn cakes. Maybe I'll think of something to say in the meantime. Man, this seems like it's gonna take a long time. Like, I appreciate that there's skill involved, but I really do not want to grind this out. This is probably the most skill-intensive game we've covered so far, but it just doesn't have as— wait, the queue! Is this real? Guys, I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think we'd ever make it here. When I saw the queue pop, I thought I'd get trapped again, but to my surprise, we actually got into a game of Monster Pyramid. The problem is that I was trapped in the Genjutsu for so long that I'd completely forgot how to play. By the end of my first game, though, I felt like I had the gist of it, so while I sit back and wait for the next game to be ready, let me explain how to play. As you might have realized, Monster Pyramid is the other PvP game, but while one card is mostly luck with a bit of decision making, Monster Pyramid is absolutely cutthroat. The goal of the game is to empty your hand. You get points for every block you place on the board, but outside of the bottom row of the pyramid, blocks can only be placed on identical blocks with the exception of the pink bean block, which each round only has one of. That block can go anywhere, and nothing can be placed on it. At the start of the game, you're given a random selection of 12 pieces, which will be your hand for the entire round. You have to choose how to place these blocks to maximize your own available space in the future, while also attempting to cut off other players' potential stacks. For example, if you draw a hand that doesn't have many of a particular flavor of block, it might be best to spend the early game trying to shut down the stacks of that type on the bottom of the board, because once they're blocked, it's entirely possible that the bottom row may fill up entirely and result in that monster being dead for both of the other players. Because there's a static pool of 36 normal blocks, if you have very few of one type, it stands to reason that the other two must have an above average number of that same monster. If you're able to effectively shut it down, you might win by default when they have to skip turns because they can't place any blocks. The special block, the pink bean, is given randomly to one player, and it can be used either in the early game to stop a stack from ever taking off, or in the late game to secure any position you want. A round ends when one player stacks all their blocks, or when no players have any blocks left to stack. A game consists of 3 rounds. At the end, you get event points based on how you ranked, just like one card. On average, Monster Pyramid games seem to take longer than any of the other games we've covered, so it's a good thing that first place rewards 300 points instead of other games 200 at their highest tiers. I think I really only have one major complaint, and that's that Monster Pyramid just takes way too long. The queues are long, the turn timer is long. There's plenty of small animations that add fractions of seconds to every action. Much like one card, most of the game is spent waiting to be able to make your next move. This is inevitable with a turn-based PvP game, but it seems that no attempts are made to speed this up at all. It's a bit excruciating. That being said, I think it's compensated for a bit by having the most engaging gameplay out of any of these minigames. Most of the problems I have with it really do just come from it being a turn-based PvP game, but it's also because it's a PvP game that it can have actual depth. The strategy here is complicated enough that it kinda hurts my brain, and I still haven't figured out a consistent way to play effectively. I'm happy I finally got into a game of Monster Pyramid, because, it's not looking like I'll be able to play many more. So, there we go. That's all 6 minigames covered in varying amounts of detail. I've spent over a month of my life on this journey, and if you're still here, you've wasted almost half an hour of yours, so how about we wrap this up so we can finally move on and be at peace? What was all this for? Well, fun, mostly. MapleStory has very little to do that's outside its intended progression. When I log in, I almost always know exactly what I'm gonna do. It's a checklist. Literally, they added a literal checklist a couple years ago. This has its own advantages, and if I didn't enjoy it at least somewhat, I wouldn't have played as long as I have. At the same time, if I don't feel like doing any of the activities MapleStory has laid out for me, it doesn't feel worthwhile to log in at all. The majority of the game's content is deprecated, completely irrelevant, forgotten, if not removed. And that's why when I see updates like the World Archive or, of course, event minigames, it makes me happy to see that they're at least trying. Even if I don't participate in them, it makes the game feel that much larger. It's kinda sad how much of modern MapleStory takes place in its own segregated slice of its once sprawling world. At the end of it all, I guess that's my goal with this video. I wanted to make something to celebrate the parts of MapleStory that the game itself often forgets. The World Archivers, the Achievement Hunters, the Legion Levelers, the Home Decorators, the Monster Collectors, the Party Questers, the Genesis Standers, the Friend Story Doers, the Giga Grinders, the Guide Writers, the Video Makers, the Solo Proggers, the Perma Beginners, the Wedding Havers, the whatever else-ers, and, of course, the Minigamers. You freaks make this game feel alive even when Shining Star Force makes me wish it wasn't. Thank you all for watching, and don't let anyone else tell you how to have fun. Good God, this video took a long time. This was supposed to be like a chill side project after my last video got a bit more negative than I would have liked, but it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I cut out and rewrote like 6 minutes of bullshit about Warframe, Path of Exile. I think I had something about Threads of Fate in there. It was stupid. Originally, I wanted to talk about that old Victoria adventure game from a few months ago, and that boat racing game they did deserved its own section. I also wanted to mention MapleStory 2's minigames as well. Basically, this is the shortened version of this already way too long video. I enjoyed making it a lot, but eventually I had to stop somewhere. I don't think many people are gonna stick around for this long, so if you made it this far, comment transmog is a minigame so I know you have the same mental illness that I do. And one last thing before I slink off into hiding. I started streaming a few weeks ago and it's been really fun. At some point everybody convinced me to make a Discord server, so if you're interested, there's a link in the description. If you want to be part of history, come stop by. It's mostly just me ranting about how cool Play Online is though. I'll probably use it as a way to solicit feedback on my next side project as well. Hopefully, that side project doesn't take another entire month to come to fruition, but when it does finally release, I hope you take the time to watch it. But even if you don't, thank you very much for watching this one.